Everybody, it's Chris and Jose for The Process. Welcome to the show. New segment called Ask Me Anything. Joining us in the studio audience today is Karen, Matt, and Aaron, and they're going to ask me anything they want. Hopefully they're going to be channeling you guys to get your questions answered, and nothing is out of bounds. So stick around. Let me try this again.
I want you guys to listen to me.
Yeah.
I design sandwiches. My name is Jose Caballero, and I talk about the business of design. I talk about a lot of stuff.
My name is Chris Doe, and I talk about the business of design.
At the center of this operating system, it's about understanding.
Jose, can we just tell them what the show title is?
I hate you, dude.
You are watching The Process. Oh my God. How many shows do we have to do before you guys figure out what the pattern is?
My bad.
You guys are not good with patterns.
bad.
I'll get you right now. Okay, guys, in case you haven't noticed, it's obvious there's some new things. New lighting, thanks to artistic director and cinematographer Andrew. And you guys can see this is a work in progress set. So we just kind of put up some artwork here so it doesn't look too bare and naked. And you're probably wondering what happened to Jose. Well, Jose is actually on a road trip. And so I'm doing the show solo today, and let's see what happens. So we're going to open this up right now to the guys, and what kind of questions are on your mind?
So, Chris, do you think now is a good time to be a graphic designer or a creative in the field?
When I talk to graphic designers at AIGA or in talks that I give, there always seems to be this very pessimistic attitude because of how technology has disrupted design in its traditional sense. There are sites like Fiverr, 99 Designs, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that seem to be eroding the price of what designers can get for their work. And so there's a lot of this negativity around it. My attitude, it's never been better to be a designer because you have direct connection with your audience. You have all the tools that you need, and you have tremendous resources on how to learn and how to create things, and you can publish, and it's at a fraction of the cost what it used to be. So it's a great time to be a designer. But the real reason why it's a great time to be a designer is because there's never been a greater need for designers. The world is moving towards a software platform. We're moving to an information economy, and who better to handle that than designers? Now, the role of the designer is changing. So if you're working on a book or a layout like this, maybe your needs and your demands are going to be a little bit different than a person who understands a little bit about psychology, user experience design, user interface, and can use the tools to create meaningful engagement through the power of design with the consumer. So you're connecting the consumers with the clients, and you're building an interface and a portal for them. Think about that. When you use an Apple computer, from the very moment in which you decide to buy the computer to the point in which you plug it in and turn it on, every step of the way, the user story has been considered and thought out. So you don't need to read any manuals, you don't need to figure anything out. It's all given to you, and it's very carefully designed. They are the gold standard for user experience all the way through. I'm not talking about customer experience, just user experience. So never been a better time to be a graphic designer. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Do you have a follow-up question, or does anybody have anything? Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying the role of a designer now is more of a facilitator or connector of two things than it is just creating cool-looking things.
I think I didn't say that directly, but that's part of it, is being a facilitator. I think the role of a designer is much bigger than it used to be, because you have to think about the technology, the front end, the back end. You have to be aware of a lot more different disciplines, but your value becomes much higher. So if you're out there and you're doing things like designing a logo, a package, a business card, there isn't great demand for that, and that's why sites like Fiverr and 99 Designs work. They give a limited design experience. But when you're thinking through the entire customer story, you're part cultural anthropologist, you're a product designer, but you're building digital products, and you have to figure out how people interact with things, not only to mention the needs of typography, layout, clear communication, those kinds of things. So there are more skill sets that are added, and of course, there's always that learning curve. So if you are somebody who's been working in the design field for decades, this may be more difficult for you to make that transition. Maybe you're better off doubling down on what you're already good at, and I believe there's a market for that too. It's the transitional designers, the people that are maybe, I would say, 5 years or less out in the world, and they're having a hard time figuring things out because they learn skills that are no more valued when they learn them. So you got to think about that. Matt, anything? Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Next question.
Next question. Are we good?
Yes.
Because we'll do. No, you.
I had
have
a
another
bit
one.
more
Go ahead.
follow-up.
Do it.
So, of these, you say there's some like extra traits that are good for designers to have. What are some examples of some traits or, I don't know, different topics? Like you said, psychology. Are those kind of things good to learn for a designer?
Absolutely. I think philosophy, I couldn't recommend that more. I think you have to start to learn how to write even if English is not your native language, because a lot of this is about crafting a language to create the customer experience. Okay? So you need to be a great visual storyteller. You have to know how to organize information. And some of this can be very complex. Those are the things that you need to think about. And what's driving all of this, I think, the secret to being a great designer are two things, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, is empathy and imagination. So now we have to learn to empathize with users and their needs, and we have to imagine the world through their eyes to solve their problems. And there are a lot of very successful companies that do that and do it really well. IDEO, we've talked about, they're all the gold standard bearer for user-centric design. You good with that? Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Matt, what's your question?
What would you recommend a student fresh out of college, design student?
What would I recommend
Yeah,
for them to do?
yeah. Well, you said that the industry is changing, correct?
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand your question. So I just finished design school. I just graduated. What should I do now?
Yeah.
Well, your first task will be to get a job, because you have, what, 8, 7 months, 9 months? How many months do you have before you have your
6.
student loans? Okay, so here's what I look at it. You have 6 months is a very finite amount of time. It's almost knowing exactly when you're going to die and you get all your ducks in a row, right? So what you want to do is think about a 6-month game plan. The maximum amount of risk you want to take is during that time. So you don't have to rush into a corporate job. You don't have to take the first job you're offered. You can explore and know that about 4 months in, you start to make a decision as to where you want to be. A lot of design students get out of school and they're enamored with a particular studio's work or their reputation or something like that, and they jump in whole hog, and they don't think about the work environment, the culture, how they treat you, what's the work-life integration like at that studio, and they commit themselves to that, and then they're basically that window of opportunity to explore is closing, and it only gets smaller. The older you get, the more responsibilities you have, the greater the financial burden you're carrying. Those kinds of things weigh you down. Your risk tolerance will go down. So you need to think about that. Okay? So how do you get a job? So a lot of people are graduating now, and if you're not graduating from one of those top tier schools at the top of your class, you may find it difficult to get a job. So here's the next best thing to getting a job, is to try your best to do an extended internship or an apprenticeship with a firm that you really believe in. Now this is really important, because this can be more valuable than your entire 4-year experience. So you got to select somebody that is going to be a great mentor, who's going to take you in, and who's going to take a responsibility for your education and your growth. If you can find a place like that, you're going to be on the right path. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah? Follow up or anything? You guys can
Follow
say
up.
whatever you want.
So, okay, going off of what you just said of an apprenticeship or an internship, how can someone like squeeze the most out of that relationship and get the most out of it? And what role does like being a leader play in that?
Okay, so how do you get the most out of your apprenticeship? That's a great question, Aaron. I think the way you get the most out of it is if you don't take time for granted. I think we look at it as if your apprenticeship is unpaid, and a lot of apprenticeships are unpaid, that you think, oh, I'm going to kind of take my time. I'm not going to sit there and stay all night or be thinking about the projects or the things that you need to do. And before you know it, 6 months, 4 months, whatever the time limit is, it'll be gone and you haven't done what you need to do. So first thing I would do is take an accounting, an audit of what's available to you, meaning what resources are available. Are there pieces of hardware, software, books, training, freelancers, mentors that exist within the company that you now have access to, and then don't take it for granted. So look at those resources and see what makes sense for you. Okay? If it's a really big company, there's chances are that there's a personality that's going to mesh really well with you and that you'll learn a lot from. Somebody who will take you under their wing and really help you along your way. So that's one thing. Don't waste time. Look at the resources and take advantage of what's there. For example, for us, we have a lot of equipment, we have a lot of tools, and there's some really incredible artists that come in and out. So, put your hand out there, introduce yourself, tell them what you want, and hopefully they'll take you under their wing. And even if they move on as a freelancer, you now have a contact in the real world that you can then follow up with later. And that person's going to remember you. He's going to say, that Aaron guy, he's a really cool guy. I'm over here and I understand he's done with his apprenticeship. I'm going to see if I can bring him in. This is what people do. They want to work with people that they like and they can trust. So be likable and be a person that people can trust. Next, take a leadership role. Ask for more things and then deliver. Do what you were asked to do. Do it with a degree of alacrity. Be cheerful. Do the work. And then people are going to recognize, wow, this person did 4 hours of work in an hour. I'm feeling the heat. I need to give this person more responsibilities, and that's how you grow. You're not going to grow if you do the bare minimum or you do what you're just asked. Okay? So that's how you grow. And if you can start to demonstrate a leadership position, smart people will step back and notice you. They'll take a note of what you're doing and be thinking about you in the future. This is something that you're not going to be aware of today. When you demonstrate skill and leadership, people think this guy or girl can be more valuable than what I'm using them for today. And perhaps after the apprenticeship wraps up, we will then engage in some kind of work together, either in a freelance, independent contractor capacity, or perhaps even staff. Any follow-up to that, guys? Go ahead. You nobody can see you raise your hand, and I don't really care. So go ahead and just ask.
What about people?
That's out of order, Karen. Who's next? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Karen.
What if you don't have access to an apprenticeship or an internship or a really expensive education? What would you recommend for people like that?
So you don't have access. You're broke and you don't have access. So you're somewhere in the middle of the country and you don't have any money. Or you're in another country where the idea of even getting a degree from a school is a tough thing. Well, there's this wonderful, beautiful thing. It's called the internet. And everything you ever want to learn is on the internet. All you have to do is learn how to ask it. That's a skill. That's something that we have to talk about because it's something that even my students that have access and have money still struggle to learn how to ask. And it's a skill that I think needs to be developed and taught in a way that's different than today. And so if you can't find what you need on the internet, it's probably a function that you haven't asked it the right way. Okay? So is that kind of your question, or I think you have something else maybe in mind?
I think what I wanted to get at was basically, how would those people know what questions to ask?
That's a great question. I don't know how to answer that question just yet because I'm trying to teach that, and maybe we can do an episode on it about how to ask great questions. Great questions generally are, it's odd, but they straddle two spectrums. A very specific question yields a yes or no question or answer, right? Very specific question yields yes or no. A very broad question, any answer fits. So you're looking for something in the middle. So you're looking for some open-ended questions, but with enough parameters. Now, we've done an exercise together before where we'll ask a question so big it probably is unanswerable. And we start to break down the words. And we key on certain words and we try to define what they mean. That's when the word is too broad and too open. So if you say, how do I grow? Well, what does growth mean to you? So you might say, how do I increase my billings to $200,000 annually as a designer? That seems to be pretty specific enough now. And now the answers can begin. Everything you want to know, I believe this, everything you want to know is already on the internet. Some of it's behind a paywall, some of it's free. Thankfully, a lot of it is free. Go ahead.
So if every question I could want to know is on the internet, why?
Every answer you want is on the internet.
Right, every answer. Sorry.
It's okay.
Why would I want to go to school? Why can't I just sit in front of my computer and learn everything I want to know?
Okay, great question. Why can't you just sit in front of your computer and want to know? Because first of all, a lot of people go to school to discover what it is they want to know. And then they learn about the humanities, and they start to figure themselves out. Now, if you're a pretty confident person and you know exactly what you want, I don't know if you need school, or school in the way it's done traditionally. I think you want to learn, and you want to be a great student, but you might not love the idea of being in school.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A bigger question, and I know this is, I'm priming the pump here, and it's one of the hot topics, is design or art school education worth the price? And we talked about it, is it worth the price? So an exercise I'd like for you guys to think about for a future episode is this. look at the hard costs of going to school. Forget the living expenses, the food, the travel, and all that. Cut all that stuff out. Just look at tuition, because we all have to live somewhere. We have to eat, and we have to go from point A to point B. If you look at the price of tuition, and I'm going to just use a round number because it's somewhere in the middle. Let's say it's $100,000. Ask yourself this question. Could I spend the $100,000 in a number of different ways that gets me a better or equal education in less time? So if you can do for less money, that's advantageous. If you can learn more, that's advantageous. Or if you can spend less. So write it down. Because a lot of people say, well, I go to school for a network of people. So if you went to a bunch of events and seminars and paid for that, let's say you went to one a month and they're $1,000 a month, that would be $12,000. And you would have an incredible network of professionals and people that are your peers that would surpass just about anything that you can come into contact with at school. Say you have access to tools and software. Well, put together the price of the hardware, the computer, the software you want to buy, and whatever tools and machines that you want. And figure out that. Put a price and a dollar value to everything. Go down the list. What e-learning tools would you use? Would you be on Lynda? Would you be on Skillshare, Udemy? Or would you go to a bunch of General Assembly things? Or would you subscribe or become a School Pro member? Think about that and look at the value. Because people oftentimes mistake value with price. They're not related, okay? If I told you, give me $100,000 and I'll teach you how to make $1 million, $100,000 is really not anything. And most rational people would do that. But don't think about the number, because $100,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it is.
What risk did you take when you started your business, Blind?
Okay, that's a good question. What risk did I take? When I started the company, I didn't have a lot of work experience, and there were probably different ways of learning how to run a business, how to work with clients, how to do marketing, sales, how to produce a job, learning about best practices, those kinds of things. And you don't have access to that. Once people realize you want to start a company and you're going to be in competition with them, they're not going to be so helpful or disclose what they know. So that becomes a problem. So you're going to have to figure it out on your own. So there is a right time and a wrong time, and for each person it's different. I just happened to be really impatient, and there was a window of opportunity, and so I took it. Guy asked, what's the worst that can happen? I just went for it. The worst that could happen for me at that time was I was going to go and work for whoever I was going to work for anyway, so that was fine for me. So you also, well, you run the risk of not knowing where the next paycheck's coming from, not making rent, and being a colossal failure. Everybody will look at you and think, well, that was foolish. And a lot of times, the fear of looking like a fool or making mistakes is enough for people not to want to take those risks. So we got to overcome that. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, if you have that business spirit, I don't think you even think about it. I'm not going to tell you right now I had all this courage to go ahead and start a company knowing what the risks were. I think I was just not that smart to know what the risks were, and I just went for it. But also just kind of within my own DNA, I've known for a very long time that I wanted to create a company. I was fascinated with the idea that I can go out, talk to somebody, secure a project fee to do something, and then go around and hire the best people to work with me to make that thing, and they make money and I make money. Maybe I'm lazy, maybe I'm smart, I don't know.
You say that you didn't think that you could fail.
Yeah?
What if you took a job with someone and you burned that bridge if you failed that job, if you didn't deliver on the value, because you said you didn't have a lot of experience?
Oh, you mean a client?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's also part of being too dumb. Is not even thinking that I could fail. Well, how could I fail? How I could fail is I would overpromise and underdeliver. So I want to underpromise and overdeliver. So if they say, can you do this in 2 days, I would try to negotiate for 3 days. And instead of giving them 3 versions, what they asked for, I'd give them 4 versions. So I always built in a cushion for mistakes, so that I didn't want to stress myself out. And this is probably one of the biggest mistakes people do, is that they think I gain confidence, I project confidence to you, the client, if I make big, bold promises. I can do it. Oh, 1 day? No problem. Oh, 25 shots? I'll do 40 shots. And then what they do is they shoot themselves in the foot. Don't do that. People do that to me more often than you think, and it leaves a bad taste in our mouth, right? Because a freelancer comes in, charges a lot of money because they heard on the street that's what people are getting, and then they can't do the work that that person that was charging that amount can do. So they've set themselves up for failure now. So when you look at the work, you say, that's not very good, it took you a really long time, and you did less than what you're supposed to do. So it's hard to recover from that. The other thing that you can do, and I do this all the time, is you just tell people I don't know. I'll do my best. I can't make that promise, and I'm willing to do it if you want to work with me. And that's it. And so I'm being very transparent and open and honest, and then people know.
I think a lot of freelancers are afraid of losing a job. Would you come in and say, hey, I'm not sure if I can do this job for you, but I'll try if you work with me? Like, how would you recommend?
That doesn't sound so good, yeah.
It doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
That does not sound good. Okay, well, I want to challenge the assumption. If you lose something, it's because you had it and you owned it. Okay? You didn't lose anything, you just didn't get that thing. So first think about it like that. So prior to them calling you or that opportunity materializing, you didn't have that opportunity and your life was just fine before it. So first think about that. Think about your sanity. Think about what kind of narrative you're building in your own mind that you need to now to win this and not to lose it like it was yours. That can mess you up. Okay, the next part is, how do you really tell somebody and be transparent without sounding really weak? So let's role play. I like to role play. Give me a situation where I'll be you and you can be the client, and I'll do my best to see if I can tackle that situation.
A small company, a restaurant wants you to design a branding package for them.
Okay, a small company,
Like an identity package, maybe a restaurant.
a restaurant wants you to design a logo for them,
Yes.
and a business card and stationery and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, their menus or their website.
Okay, small mom and pop, they have multiple stores. How many stores do they have?
They have 2.
Okay, they have 2 stores, and so they want to hire you to design an identity system for them. Perfect. I've done that before. This is great. So what's the problem?
You're a young designer and you're really green.
Obviously.
And you don't know if you can complete the job.
You don't know that? Or you need to convince them that you... I mean, have you designed enough identity systems in school?
But this is like your first big job. This is
Why is real different than imaginary?
it's like shooting free throws in your house versus in the big game, you know?
So it's a mindset. Same
Same.
basket, same ball, same gravity, same oxygen, same everything. It's a mindset. So you know what they call some fighters? They're like gym fighters. They're really good in the gym, but when they get on the big stage, they crumble. Crumble like a potato chip. It's a mentality. So even in the way you set up that scenario, I feel like you're already ready to lose. Even as a young designer, I've been accused of being very confident. Another word for that is cocky. Another word for that is arrogant. I just believe in what I can do. I learned what I had to learn in school. I put in the work. I worked like a demon, right? When people were out partying and doing stuff, I was in the library. When people were goofing off and sleeping, I was working. I was working on my assignments. So I put in the time to do the thing, right? So how can the client know more about lettering, typography, typesetting, identity design than me? It's not possible, right? Otherwise, they would have designed it themselves. So I already know that going into the situation. So now you want me to do something. Now, as a young designer, I'm not going to know about branding, messaging, user-centric design. I don't know any of that. I'm going to create a good-looking mark for you based on the parameters that you provide. So the first part is defeating the voice inside your head that says you can't do it. Just know you can do it. Defeat, not an option. It's do or die, and you will do. And you have to kind of look at it like that. Did you ever go into an assignment in school and say, I can't do this? And then, of course, what happens? You don't do it. I always went to every single class, for every single assignment, no matter how hard, I'm going to do this. I won't sleep. That's it. Okay, so you need to defeat that part of your brain that says, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. All those kind of negative self-talk that you go through. Get rid of that. All that self-doubt is killing you. Now you're going to go in, and I don't want you to go in puffed up chest and say, I'm God's gift to graphic design. I'll do this identity system like you've never seen. I'll embarrass Paul Rand right now. I'm just going to do it. Don't do that. Just be real about the thing. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to do some great work for you. Let's figure out what the problem is. And go and be an incredible image maker. Pick the right font for them. Pick a great color palette. Lay it out beautifully. That's really what you're asked to do. And don't undersell yourself. One of the worst things you can do is to start to negotiate against yourself for the client.
What does that sound like? What do you mean by negotiating against yourself?
Well, this is how it sounds like. Say you want to charge $2,000 for this thing. Okay? I want to charge $2,000 to design you a logo and a stationery system. The way that your mind may process that is, $2,000 is a lot, and I just graduated school, and I don't have a lot of experience. They might want to hire Mary or Sally or somebody else, and where am I to charge $2,000? I was working at Starbucks making $10 an hour before. So yeah, how do I justify that? I was thinking about charging $1,200. That's what you do. So you got to stop that. Does that work for you? Now, in theory, when I say it, you nod your head and you're like, I can do that. But the execution is something else. So you have to have some coaching, maybe a mentor who can help you. And this I find to be very helpful for me, how I've done this before. Whenever I'm afraid of doing something, whenever I lack the skill to do something, I try to find somebody that I know that does that thing already, just that one thing. And I start to model myself after that person. Okay? People like to call it faking it till you make it. I just want to see how they interact with people. So if you guys know me really well from way back in the day, I'm an extreme introvert. I have a hard time looking at you in the eye or even saying hello or asking you how your day is going. So I just hang out with people who do that. And they do it very naturally. And I see how they respond to questions like that. And I start to act like them. I model myself after that person. By doing so, then I just become that person. And you guys have seen me on many lunch occasions. I'll strike a conversation with a complete stranger. And I'll get into it with him just like today at lunch. That's how I relate. And I have practiced doing it. And that way, when it's showtime, it's just another conversation with a human being. That's it. Don't put the power over them, or don't give them the power to have over you. And that's, I think, a lot of times what we do when we meet somebody that we admire a lot, a celebrity, a teacher, somebody we've admired their work. We give them all this power. They're just another human being just like you and me, no different. Okay?
I have one last question.
Okay, and I think we're going to take this last question and we're going to wrap it up unless there's a follow-up to it, okay? Go ahead.
You've mentioned twice in this episode that we should find mentors, young professionals.
Mhm.
How will
Not
would
necessarily young, but yeah.
someone new, green?
No. I mean, you as a young professional, or we should find a young professional that's a mentor?
Oh, as in
The way you
someone who
phrase
is
that.
young and new in this should find
You could be
a
old
mentor.
and crusty. Why do we think we need to be young to find a mentor? Is that an ego thing?
No.
If you want to learn, find a mentor, period.
How
Is that
do you-
okay?
Yes. How do
Alright.
you know when you found the right mentor?
I don't know. How do you know the flavor of ice cream is the one you want? You try it out. You see what fits. Don't overthink it. So they're going to have some qualities that you think you can learn from. Perhaps it's how they communicate. Perhaps it's the work that they do. Or maybe the way they carry themselves. There's a number of different things because you need to find someone that you're compatible with. If you're really shy and you see somebody who's really outgoing and wants to teach and share that way, obviously that's not a great complementary kind of learning style to yours. Okay? You're just looking for somebody who has experience in the things that you want to learn from and does it in a style that you think you can, that is safe for you and that you can adapt. You have a puzzled look on your face.
Thinking about it.
What's not jiving with you?
I guess for young people, I've never really felt comfortable, I've never really felt comfortable just going up to someone and saying, hey, I want to learn from you. So how would you suggest for young people to find a mentor? How would you suggest that young people approach them?
Well, if you don't ask for something, you'll never get it. I know that much. It begins by asking and have the courage to ask. A long time ago, when I was still in school, I learned a lot from my typography instructor, Simon Johnston. I feel like he taught me everything I know about type and more. So when it was time for me to figure out an internship, I just walked up to him and asked him, Simon, have you ever considered having an intern before? Because I'd like to be your intern. He thought about it and says, I've never had an intern before. I'm glad you asked. Now I wonder for how many years had Simon taught that nobody ever came and asked him, can I intern for you? So you seek out the people you admire and their teaching style, and you ask. And what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, and you're no better off than, or worse off than you were before. You didn't lose anything. What do you lose, Aaron?
Well, you feel bad.
Humility.
You
Yeah, you lose a little something like self-esteem. But you didn't have that before. You know what I
Right.
mean? You didn't have him as a mentor.
Oh, right.
Not self-esteem, right? So it's okay for people to say no to you. That shouldn't reflect you. It's just they have other things going on. They're not ready for it. You just have to ask, Aaron. So you see them at an event, they speak, and you come up to them and you just ask, hi, my name is Karen. I love what you had to say. I really connected with X. And I was wondering, here's the ask, because you're scaffolding towards it, right? Don't do it cold.
So
Like
throw
chasing-
some compliments first.
Well, no, you're building up to this idea that you're going to ask a question.
Okay.
I don't want to say it like you're buttering them up. But if you saw me at a clothing store and you tapped me on the shoulder and say, can I intern for you? That's going to creep me out. And it's happened to me before, so let's just say that that's what it is. Right? You want to let them know what you got from them and why you want to do it, so when you ask, it all makes sense. It's like when I'm talking to somebody in a very social context at a party or an event, and they come up to me and say, oh no, they like all of a sudden they say, so when are we going to work together? That's really weird for me. I don't respond well to that. You're not scaffolding.
Okay.
Okay? Does that make sense? So don't do that.
Okay.
Or it's in my experience and my opinion that you should not do that, because it just doesn't work for people like me. Some people can handle that level of directness and they'll just say, no, buzz off. But it's difficult for me because I don't like conflict. Okay, guys, hope you got something of value in this episode called Ask Me Anything. As always, comment below. I'll read them, I'll respond, and so will Jose. Jose, he's nodding his head. He will respond. And like this video if you like it. Let us know what we can do to improve the show. Subscribe. See you next time. Let me throw this card at the camera and then we'll cut out.